come back to the city sometimes after 10 years or something, you say nothing has changed here. You will say certain things are like in a time warp. These are like the Statesman House is in a time warp. There's this language of stasis. There's also this language of sort of death and decline that you call Calcutta a necropolis, a kind of city of the dead. You also talk about even the world of the imagination in Calcutta as a necropolis, a graveyard of dreams, which suggests that there were many dreams and ambitions for historical change, revolutionary change, which have not happened, and the discourse has not changed. So the discourse of alternatives has not been frozen. So, I mean, one gets also a lot of talk about history, of famine, of partition, of war, of Nasrallah, etc. And I'm just wondering if all of these temporalities are meant to be seen together in Calcutta. Somehow they are at different levels, or some get submerged, some come to the surface. At one point you talk about Calcutta as a swamp city. It's sort of, you're sinking into it. Nothing happens in it. And I'm trying to understand that imagery of the swamp city with respect to the title of the book, and what I think is a very provocative image, which is the epic city. So, so that's my sense of your the other thing about temporality and necropolis. But I know you're trying to see something about this category of the epic city, and I would like to know, why do you call Calcutta the epic city?
Yeah, the temporality is important. I think, there's in any great city, there's creation and destruction happening at the same time, all the time. It's happening all the time. I mean, and the question is, what are you looking at in that place, right? If you only have a single narrative, then you're blind to everything else that is going on in that society. And what I try to do, one of the things that I try to do is two things. One is that I try to give those narratives, the narratives of death, decline, we were great once. Calcutta has always had this kind of narrative of having been great once, and it's like, individuals have that narrative, we were great, we could have been somebody, families have the narrative, we were great once, and the city has this narrative, and just because it's ridiculous doesn't mean it's not true as a narrative, right? That story is there. And the fact that the city is dead is also true in some ways, when I went back in 2000, almost nobody in my generation, in my family, was in Calcutta. I came from a very big families. My mother's family is 7, my father's family is 13 brothers and sisters. And none of the kids, not none, but the majority of the children on both sides had left or were trying to leave Calcutta at that time. And so people were very surprised, why is he coming back? That has changed also in the last 10, 15 years. And so this idea of the city was dying, certainly for an educated class of people with college degrees. The city was sort of, stultifying and dying. And that is a story that's there. And my point is not to make an argument against it, but it's to have that narrative there, with that narrative also of the golden age, with the narrative of other narratives layered at the same time, right? And it's also to suggest that my own understanding shifts back and forth, not in an evolution from A to B, but that it's sort of like you sort of, fall in and out of things, right? There are exultant moments, and then there are moments of deep despair, And that also I wanted to keep. So there are these kind of different narratives. There's also the reality of living in a city like that is extremely frustrating at times. It's extremely frustrating, to live in Calcutta and work in Calcutta as an adult. It's a beautiful place to leave and be nostalgic about. But, it's not an easy place to live and build, It's very difficult. People who have lived in Calcutta and made something lasting in the world are almost all of them extremely fundamentalist people, the people that I met, They're extremely they're obsessive. They're extremely hardcore, because you have to be like that in some ways to fight with the society that is around you, that is sort of always kind of, sapping you into a kind of, don't be a tall poppy, and that's part of the experience of living in the city too. I don't want to discount that, you know. But it's also a city where you can survive, I think, as a poet, as a singer, as a musician, as a theater person, in a way that you cannot, even today, you know, after all this money and liberalization, in any other part of the country, you know, at least not in any other major city. I think that's also true. So those things are part of the experience of living and working in that city as well. The reason that I wanted to say that it's epic, so I think works in two ways. You know, the idea of, is that what it is? Or, yeah, modern literature, right? Like, if you think about the novel, the novel is a kind of disavowal of the epic, right? So, you know, like, if you start with Don Quixote, right? Don Quixote is this guy who thinks he's like a medieval knight, and he's hallucinating, right? It's ridiculous. He's not, he's just a nobody, right? There's a kind of rationality that is driving the modern, that's the first novel in Western literature, right? If you think about the sort of, what Ulysses is, Joyce's Ulysses, for those of you who read, Joyce's Ulysses takes place in one day, right? Ulysses is a take on, you know, the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey, right? But in the Odyssey, you know, we've got Helen is over there in Troy, and you know, Odysseus has to go get her, and it takes like 20 years, and, you know, and there's a battle, and there's all the sea voyaging and all this stuff, right? In Ulysses, in Joyce, nothing happens. It just takes place in one day, in one city, people kind of walking around, thinking normal thoughts. There's a funeral, there's a bar fight, you know, that's it, right? And the whole point that he's trying to make there is that what is epic about the modern condition that the novel can explore is that there are whole worlds in the everyday, right? In everyday life in a city like Dublin, and in the mental lives of ordinary people, just going about their business. There are worlds upon worlds that are as fascinating as a guy getting on a ship and traveling and fighting, right? So there is that level that I'm trying to capture in the book, right? A place that nothing happens, in a city where nothing happens. I don't talk to anybody important. I don't write about dramatic things. I try to write about the worlds that are there on the street in front of me, and the mentalities and the feelings that are there. But there's another layer, I think, of epicness that happens in the city. And I think it's something that maybe reflects on some of the conversations that you and I used to have back in those days, which is that I think in a place that is not, I think certainly in India, but I think maybe in many places that are not the West, increasingly I'm not even sure if the West is like this, whether sort of time has been rationalized and experiences have been flattened out of their epicness. But certainly in places like India, the mental worlds of ordinary people, of all people, including ourselves, contain an epicness. That our mental worlds have epic stories in them, and epic frames in some way. That we are going about our everyday lives, but there is a kind of way in which we frame our sort of activities within larger epic narratives. I can talk about this more, but one of the things that I try to show in the book, I think it's why, you know, these films, like Karan Arjun kind of films, you know, Chakravyuh, Hindi films are able to capture this kind of stuff, right? They're able to tap into sort of these kind of, you know, narrative registers that really, you know, resonate with people, you know. In the book, all I do with that is just touch on the fact that during Durga Puja, which is this time when the whole city stops, and every neighborhood, you know, that everyday world puts up something epic. There's this epic battle between Durga and Mahishasura, the demon, the battle of good and evil, that is enacted on every street corner, in every park, not in, you know, 5 or 10 places, but in almost 1,000 handles all over the city. A new kind of architecture takes over the city, right? All the important parts of the city become unimportant, and all the peripheral parts of the city enact this epic drama. And I think that is a kind of physical instantiation of that epic kind of narrative that is there in people's minds.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more to be said about that, City, about the Durga and Mahisasura and things like this. But maybe what we should do now is to just open it up and see if there are any questions or comments from any of you.
No, please. No, I'm.
Okay, thanks Kush for this presentation. I heard some other parts quite a while ago. The one thing, the character Imran in your story, okay, because I think you started with this whole narrative about how Calcutta has been imagined, okay. So you already have a imagination of Calcutta through novels, through academic writings. So this particular intervention of yours troubles that narrative?
Which one?
Your epic city. So we have a, we have an imagination of Calcutta.
What's the imagination? There are a couple of sentences, like what comes to your mind?
No, so this whole romanticization obviously is there. So that romantic Calcutta is there, whether it's academic writings or also through that. But through the character of Imran, you tend to, give us a different narrative, which challenges the politics of Calcutta, which is not necessarily this great radical politics that has transformed. But that's just one. But I don't want you to push only to that point.
Yeah.
But the overall, the framing of it is like we have a narrative. So you have this now new narrative for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it does. I mean, because I have not read the whole thing obviously, and so obviously Imran's character helps us to, completely challenge that narrative what we have known as non-Calcutta residents or
Because you don't think there's any communalism in Calcutta.
Yes, obviously. So there is this narrative that there are how communal harmony is there and everything is there. So you do challenge that in this very short piece that you presented, and you do challenge that. I mean, obviously we know that the Muslim marginalization is a big story now, and so that comes through this conversation with Imran, this housing segregation. So these are things that was not part of the Calcutta narrative.
Yeah.
Okay, or Bengali, forget about the Bengal narrative, but at least for the Calcutta narrative, this absolute segregation we talk about for Bombay. Yes.
Yeah.
Bombay is something that's absolutely communal, very segregation. You talk about job discrimination. So
Yeah.
all of this is in this short passage. You bring about so many things. So that tells a different narrative about Calcutta.
Yeah, so one of the things I think I try to do is like distrust the kind of, I try to start from the ground up, and distrust all the narratives about that, those narratives are there, like what I was saying about the decline and the golden age and, what the communists did, the Bengal Renaissance. I mean, all of these things, all of these stories are there, but my gut is always to sort of start with what I can see and what I can experience, right? And what I see and what I experience is very different than the story that, okay, so on the communal thing, the story is that in Calcutta there's no communalism. There are multiple versions of it. One is Bengalis are not communal. Two is that Calcutta is not a communal city. Three is that the communist politics stopped any kind of communalism from happening. Four is that there have never been any riots. These are all kind of stories that we carry around with us, and there is some truth to all of them in some way, right? For instance, the story that there have been no riots has a truth that, particularly under the communists, there have been very little violence. But the fact of the matter is that Calcutta is a city that is completely communally in the Muslim divide, and that struck me as very strange when I started working in Calcutta. That nobody would ever talk about that, right? And not only is it divided, but that in Calcutta there's also this kind of very weird thing, which is that the Muslim parts of the city are Urdu speaking, and the Hindu parts of the city are Bengali speaking. And if you come to Calcutta as a say non-Bengali speaking Hindu, it can be Gujarati, Marwari, Tamil, whatever, you will within 2 or 3 years learn to speak Bengali. If you come to Calcutta as a Bengali speaking Muslim, within a generation your children will be Urdu speaking. That you will be assimilated into an Urdu speaking world, which most people who are Bengalis in Calcutta don't realize because they are Bengali Hindus. That there is a kind of assimilation that happens into an Urdu speaking milieu even of people who are Bengali speaking, because the urban space in the Muslim parts was always Urdu hegemonic, right? So curious phenomenon. Now, why don't people know? Because nobody asks. Nobody is curious. Because people think that they know everything. Nobody even makes that simple kind of, thing. So, I started to wonder why is this? How did this happen? Then I started to realize that in 1946, before partition, this is one of the things I mentioned, talk about later on in the book. That until 1946, from 37 to 46, this is back and forth going on between the Muslim League and the Congress, right? About what is going to happen. This is going to be some kind of like confederation of 3 sections, parts of India. Is going to be, some minority rights to Muslims. What arrangement is there going to be in the subcontinent once the British leave? The idea that there will be a Pakistan is only becomes there's a demand for Pakistan from 1940, but the idea that there will be a nation state called Pakistan only comes about in 1946. And the reason that it comes about is once the cabinet mission plan fails, or when Nehru says that we can change this later on after the country is free, Jinnah calls for a direct action day. He never says what he means by direct action, but the people on the ground know what he means. The only place that the Muslim League at that time had a government, where they controlled the provincial government, was in Calcutta. Choudhury was the chief minister of the province. And so they were able, and at that time, 1946, right, the British and the American GIs were heavily armed in Calcutta, because they were thinking that there was going to be a war with the Japanese coming on the Eastern Front. So there were a lot of arms. These guys, GIs, with lots of guns and nothing to do. And there was a black market for arms. You could basically, from what I've read, you could sell a bottle of rum or whiskey to a GI and get a gun. All right? So there's a lot of arms, both in the Muslim League and in the Congress and in the Massawa people. So when Direct Action Day was announced, it became a kind of license for the Muslim League for the first few days to go out and, they knew that they had the administration. And Sarabadi was not going to do anything, to go out and riot. The problem is that the Muslim League in Calcutta was never a majority. It was basically a rural-based party in Bengal. And Muslims in Calcutta were never more than 25-30% of the population. So when the counter-rioting started, and there are debates about, this is why we have so many historians, nobody's written it. There's one, Janan Mukherjee has a history now that has come out about what happened in those days, but, it would be really nice if we had neighborhood-level histories of what happened. It's all folklore. It's what I know from talking to people. But the rioting and counter-rioting kind of started, or whatever, the sort of violence that took place for 7 days in Calcutta is unprecedented in Indian cities. Nowhere else have we had that kind of rioting. There were so many dead bodies that they had to bury people in mass graves in the cemeteries. They had to chop people's bodies up and stuff them into drains. And it was August, so bodies are decomposing in the monsoon. They took wheelbarrows full of bodies and threw them into the river. It's a carnage on an enormous scale. And basically, the areas the Muslim League controlled and the areas the Congress controlled, they raised their own flags. And this is Hindustan and this is Pakistan. Where there were bus routes, the buses would have to go around, and go through the Hindustan parts. And the city that we have today, the lines that exist today of where a Muslim area starts and where Hindu area ends, are all lines that were drawn in August of 1946. Right? But there are no memorials of it. There's no plaque in the city, anywhere that says that so-and-so died here or so-and-so was killed. It's all remembered in this kind of folklore. In Bovada, for instance, in College Street, if you go up College Street, there's a guy, this would be a Bengali meat shop. It's called Bengali Manshutuka, with a Kali inside, statue of Kali. And that meat shop was owned by a guy, Gopal Mukherjee, used to be called Gopal Bhatha, means Gopal the goat. And in 46, in Bovada, he was the main organizer of riots, of Hindu rioters. And everybody who has ever lived in Bovada knows that. They know that that's what he did. And he was unrepentant till the bitter end, He became a Sikh, he thought that was a more militant kind of thing. And after independence, he became the right-hand man of Bidhan Chandra Rai, who was the very well-respected Congress chief minister in West Bengal. so he had this kind of, cover for his activities. But no history has been written about these people. No history has been written about these neighborhoods. But the reason that we have the reality that we have in Calcutta is not accidental. It's part of the history of Bengal. It's just the history of Bengal that we choose not to remember, right? I'm sorry, that was a very long-winded answer.
Just next question. Would it be right to say that, there are elements in your book which are trying to engage, tell a different story? The reference that seems to come up in the book is against these kind of narratives, not that are romantic about Calcutta, but that depict Calcutta as the urban hellhole. You talk about that a few times, and how that is actually not what you're trying. Well, is there something else to say about Calcutta? And that happens to be oftentimes the vitality, I think, of these Maduro spaces. But also when it comes to looking at the deindustrialization narrative, there are some interesting elements here of the ways in which retired, retrenched workers who are trade union workers are reflecting on the deindustrialization process and the role of trade union militancy in that. I think that's pretty interesting. I haven't seen too much of that elsewhere. But there would be many, I think, aspects. This is just perhaps one of them, the aspect. I don't know. To Sunit's question, I think there might be various elements that try to say that give a different picture.
Yeah, I think that's true. In all of them, there's a kind of the history that actually happened has not been written. One of the ironies of Bengal, I think, is that we have produced so many historians who have not written our history.
You're going to start insulting people.
I am insulting people. I have a generational bone to pick with them. I think that we lost it. I think people should take it personally. We have, we don't have it. Nobody bothered to talk. This guy Gopal was around in plain sight until like 5 years ago. It's like, when you read Choudhury's history of criminal rights in Bengal, he never bothered to go talk to that guy. His sources are all from newspapers and the British Library and Topan Choudhury, who was his advisor, telling him about what he remembered from the riots. And it's like, like a basic journalist, maybe that's also the reporter's instinct, right? Like, I wish that somebody had gone and talked to these people in these neighborhoods who actually had conducted riots and would, in 1997, the BBC went and interviewed some of these people, and they interviewed this guy, they interviewed this guy who completely changed in Telangana after meeting Gandhi in 46. I write about him briefly in the book. But the other thing that I would say, actually, and this is actually one thing I'm going to say, that it's not just the history, there's a secret, terrible history that is there. I think the other extraordinary thing in Calcutta is that after all of that happened, and then partition happened, on $15 1947, Gandhi is in Calcutta, in a neighborhood where all of this kind of stuff has happened, trying to stop riots from happening again, right? Then after all of that, a different kind of society was born in that city, where you don't have this kind of communal violence happening. That's also true, and that didn't just happen. That was produced at the neighborhood level, over and over and over, and it continues to be produced, even today, and that's also something extraordinary. It's not something to ignore. That story also is not told. So I think there are, like I said, both sides of the stories of what has actually happened in that city.
Okay, why don't we take a few questions at once, perhaps, since we're running out of time. Sure.
I was born in North Calcutta. I don't know whether that qualifies me to ask more than one question. I have lived it for many years until I left. So, Kushanava, is that how you pronounce it? Kushanava, I haven't read your book, but the questions I'm going to ask follow from the discussion today. I'd like to read your book, of course. I read in your bio note that you have been a writing fellow in the University of Pennsylvania with the Center for Writing Studies, and I think I shared in, and you just spoke about the argument as I think it hinted the limits of critical writing to an extent. So my first question is, because your bio note also says it's a scholar's mind, and the book is a product of the scholar's mind and a writer's heart. So my question is basically, because I'm going through a similar kind of, so do you think that your book could be, now that you look at it as a reader, could be located at the interstices of the critical and the creative where would you situate this work from the perspective of a, scholar in terms of the discipline it belongs to? Or do you think the critical mode of engagement is not enough to really write about Kolkata? That's one.
What do you mean the critical mode?
Yeah, I don't mean anything. In fact, I don't have a definition for it. I think none of us do. But we do talk a lot about, academic writing and then creative writing and critical writing. We all know and battle over the fact that these divisions do not exist. But conventionally, in academia, they do. No matter how much we question them, they do. So once we are here to address those conventions, where do we really situate this kind of a work is my, it's something I have been trying to negotiate myself. So my question really comes from that existential mode. That's one question. The second question follows from the first question Shankar asked in the question related to food. I think that's a very crucial question. I mean, in place of food, it could have been smell or it could have been sound. I work with sounds, and my work on migrant laborers and work songs intersects to a bit with Shankar's. So, I think the question, I'm really going to push his question and, trying to think that what is it that formatted, if it's food or anything else, because any city for that matter, including Calcutta, is also about boundaries, as it were. The rural, urban and suburban divides, spill over, and the migrant laborers come in and go. So there are different kinds of mobilities, and I'm sure you talk about those mobilities in your book. So my question really is, do those mobilities inside Calcutta do something to the boundaries of Calcutta? And when I hear the term epic city, I don't know why, I'm reminded of Ritik Ghatok and Shubhanrekha, and I don't know how, but I am reminded of it. And I'm glad to hear about Ajantrik, it's my favorite film. So yeah, my second question then, it's all related, all these questions are boundary questions actually. They talk about mobilities. So yeah, I'm going to stop short at this. I would have more questions later after this. But
sure, I think it's a form question is a good question. I think the thing that I was trying to get at in this very long-winded response that I gave to this thing is that, that lots of things happened in the city. It's like the thing that you were asking me about communists and the trade union workers, right? I didn't answer that question directly. What I was trying to say is that, communism and trade unionism, let's say communism as a whole, the city that I write about is a communist city. I was born in a communist city, and the last description that I give, I stopped working in this city before the end of left front rule, right? But left front rule, in what it said that it was, in the ideologies that it had almost nothing to do with the left front rule that actually was there on the ground, in every way. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. I mean that in good ways and bad ways. What actually happened and what was articulated as sort of the program are so different that, that it's very difficult to see from an academic point of view. It's very difficult to from an academic point of view and from a reporter's point of view, it's very difficult to find the language to describe what you kind of know experientially.
absolutely.
And that was the thing that I struggled with. I talk about one chapter in the book where I'm talking about being a reporter and I'm trying to write about these evictions of squatters. And I know that the language that I'm using to write about these evictions is just the language of the newspaper. It's not even the language that I believe, but I just don't have a better language. And so I just keep using the language, knowing that this is a kind of pantomime. I'm playing my part. The politicians playing their part, and the media is playing its part, and everybody's sort of playing their part in some kind of drama. So it took me a long time to write the book. It took me, 4 or 5 years, and it's not because there's a lot of information in the book. It's a thin book. There's not a lot of information. It's because I was trying to find the language with which to express the things that I knew experientially and try to connect them to the things that I knew, in a scholarly way and in a journalistic way, right? And that takes a lot of time, and it's very difficult to have that language. And I think that is kind of creative work. At least that was the creative work that I did. I did, you know, and I had to, that was the work, really, you know, to try to tell a story based on what I knew was true, but I couldn't articulate when I was a reporter or academic, which I didn't see reflected in the academic work. And so that requires producing a new form. I think that, you know, the form that I'm using on my show, you know, this, you know, I was trying to play with different kinds of forms, you know, learn from other people, other kinds of forms that are there that can be more productive to telling this kind of a story. But that's it. It's not academic work, right? What do I hope? I hope that somebody who is an academic will read this and maybe think a little bit differently, you know, about the things that they think about, you know. Just like I hope that young people will sort of read this, you know, in Calcutta. I mean, we sort of are a lost generation in Calcutta, I think. You know, the people who are coming up now will read this and figure out, it will help them tell different kinds of stories about the city than the stories that we received and reproduced, even though we did not believe them, you know.
I think we have time for one last question.
Okay, I can't say anything about it. I'll talk about it next week.
Borrowing from the lines Kushanava used about the writer's heart, there is also the reporter's hustle. So, how much of the reporter's hustle comes into your writing?
A lot. It was very good training. Reporting. Yeah. There's a lot of it. I mean, you see in the part that I read also, you know, it's like going here, going there, that kind of stuff. You know, trying to figure out stuff. And the really nice thing about being a reporter is, like I said, it's very frustrating because at the end of the day, you know, you are stuck in this kind of form and you can't say bigger things. Even though most reporters, the thing is, most reporters you talk to know much more than they articulate in their writing. They just know much more just from being out there in the world, you know, about how society works. And they can tell you about it oftentimes, but they don't put it in the, but it doesn't, most of what they know doesn't fall into a beat, or it doesn't make, it's not a story, so it never makes, the printed page. So there's a kind of basic knowledge that you get from just being a reporter day in, day out. That's really good. I think there's also kind of thing about, in Calcutta, coming from a middle class background, you have this kind of like bubbliness about you, which is that like, and it's not just a class or caste thing. It's also a result of having been traumatized by the Nazi period. You are raised to. There's always a trauma in my generation of people that there was always this fear that parents had that if kids went out into the world too much, that they would become wayward. They would, that somehow, for instance, politics was a very dangerous thing. Politics could lead you down astray. Mixing with the wrong kind of people. The people of the street, could kind of. So you were supposed to kind of live as narrow a life socially as possible. First, it's not really possible to live a very narrow life because, this issue of boundaries that, a very heterogeneous kind of life is there on the street all the time. But the reporting thing, so, like when you're a kid, you're taught don't talk to strangers, right? Reporting is all about talking to strangers, for instance, and going to places that you would never go. And I think that was very good training, for writing the book.
Can I squeeze in a bit more? Okay.
I might not be able to, wait to hear your answer. There's one is a small question, the other is a slightly not so well-formed one. So the first one is about whether you have plans to get the book translated into Bangla or
I would love to translate in Bangla. Do you have a good translator?
No, so my question was that you would be the one to do it or
No, it needs to be somebody who is a good writer in Bangla, I think.
So that was the first.
Yeah.
The second one was about, I haven't read the book, so clearly these are things that might already feature in the book. But it seemed to me that your project, if I can call it that, I did dislike that word, but seems like something that you've been doing for a while now, is to both maintain a romantic attachment with the city while at the same time trying to unmask its gangrenous core. And it seems in line with some of the Bangla writers who or Navarun Bhattacharya who've done similar kind of things in fiction, of course. Also, what might be called Navarun's kind of anti-novel form. So would those two be writers who've kind of been a part of the way in which you've thought about this?
Yeah, I think those guys. So I think that generation, all basically 70s, very Naxal influenced writers. Navarun wasn't Naxal. Choudhury was very heavily influenced at that time in the 70s. Basudeb Dasgupta, another writer. Even Choudhury to some extent.
Also the Hungry Generation.
Yeah, the Hungry Generation poetry. Yeah. So Basudeb Dasgupta would be one of the Hungry Generation poets, and he has these amazing short stories. That whole generation, because I think that they were able to see with open eyes, and the political program, I think, was, the answer maybe was not the right answer, but the question was the right question. The way that they were looking was the right way, the things that they were saying, the things that they were seeing were the right things to look at. So they have a big influence in the way that I wrote, the things that I show. They have a big influence, and I think that, there's a question about the whole, so much of the Naxalite period in my head is, so much of the reporting that I did is not in the book about that period, because so much of the stories that it's difficult for, I think I wasn't clear on what the story was that I wanted to tell. But I will say this, there was a Naxalite leader that I met, in 71, he was from Barnacle. He had a wife and a child, and in 71 there was basically a wiping out of Naxalites in Barnacle, in his neighborhood. And he sort of fled for like 6 years, until 77, when the CPM came. And then he was allowed to come back. He was allowed to not be a refugee in his own city. And then he got a job in the corporation. He was a member of C2. He was some low level like clerk or something. Lived a kind of, apolitical normal life. But, by the time I got to him, he had left politics for 30, he was not doing any revolutionary politics. But, these guys, you scratch the surface and there's still something, the way of seeing the world is the same. And one thing he told me, he said, listen, so we failed. But, Tagore wasn't built in a day, right? Tagore took 3 generations. There was Darukanath, before that, Gavindanath, and then before that there was Darukanath, right? So maybe we're the first generation. And maybe in 2 generations, the things that we put in are going to bear fruit. And I think, some of these stories of Shubimal and these writers, maybe they will bear fruit in the next generation.
Well, Kush, I just want to suggest something to you, and you can tell me later if it's right or wrong. But when you talk about this image of the epic city, you introduce it. It's almost as if the epic city is revealed to you through the experience of Durga Puja. You say that an epic city full of possibilities and visions arise where strangers come together in spectacle, etc. That is certainly one aspect. You now mentioned also the epic in consciousness of people. But when I read the book, what I'm left with is a few other senses of the epic city. Calcutta is an epic city in terms of its history and experiences of conflict, violence, suffering, and death, which we talked about now, famine, direct action, degradation, and also the Bangladesh war, etc. It is also the other place where epic comes up in the book is we talk about the epic war of labor and capital, which is going on in the city. A third aspect that I think is also very interesting is one might suggest that it is also epic in its failure, that is to say, its failures to change in the multiple ways desired by its inhabitants. So much of the book is about that failure, and failure of imagination, failure to change, failure of meaning. And the epics themselves, after all, many of them, Mahabharata ends pretty badly, same with Ramayana. So failure is a big part of the epic world too. But finally, and this is where I'd like to really, what I thought was the beauty in this image of the epic city is the possibility that, again, when you move to the level of the everyday, beyond the level of grand events, you do see a kind of process going on the ground all the time of kind of everyday peacemaking of living together, which I think is also something epic in the everyday that's just was going to ask you, Kush, to end with, could you read this paragraph, which I think is, to me, what the Epic City ultimately is about. I think that's very
This
powerful.
paragraph?
Yeah, this one right here.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is about the refugee colonies. Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is at the very end. So just trying to talk about the refugee colonies that make up the quarter of the
It
city.
stands about the city as a whole.
The city as a whole, yeah. And so, and like many people in Calcutta, I also have a refugee background, even though we never said that we were refugees. But yeah, my father's side of the family, they were refugees. As are 1 in 4 people in Calcutta today. And not only is the population, is refugee experience a core part of the population, but also spatially, the parts that were settled by refugees and squatted by refugees, the hundreds of colonies, make up a huge spatial footprint of the city today. So this is about one of those spaces. The city had let these people live, as it had millions of those who still came from the countryside, pushed by hunger and hatred onto its streets, its squatter camps, and its slums. All that violence was still there, waiting to be triggered, and yet, in spite of the daily struggles, in Calcutta, we remade a new peace each day. A tight social order arose from the para clubs and the tea shops and the puja pandals. This city did not happen by accident. The miracle of what we had achieved together as a people was that those countless little pieces made this present city and let people live together again.
Thanks, Kush. Please join me in thanking Kush for letting